Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining today, for joining our webinar on how to become a BMA, a British Medical Association representative, and make the most out of it, especially for your leadership development in your career. I'm Christina Kostake. I'm a paediatric registrar and a PhD student, and I've also got the amazing Rohan Krishnan today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Rohan. I'm currently a co-trainee psychiatry in London. I'm part of the BMA and I work with Christina, but I'm also one of the reps for the Resident Doctors Committee at the Royal College of Psychiatrists.
I did realize I didn't say a single word about what I do in the BMA. I'm a BMA National Council elected representative and also sit on the Yorkshire Regional Council and have been a BMA rep probably for about 8 years now in various leadership positions, which I'll mention throughout the presentation, and helping you perhaps explore various career routes, or not necessarily career routes, but routes into the BMA where you could find your place within the BMA. So first of all, in order to become a BMA rep or BMA representative, should this interest you, you have to be a BMA member. So you have to pay, well, not necessarily pay, because if you're an international medical graduate new to the UK, you get, I think it's a couple of years free, but also even if you haven't been in the UK only for 2 years, at the minute you do get a part of your membership for the first few months, I think, free. But in order to be a rep, you have to pay, which in a way makes sense. You have to be a paying member of an organization in order to represent it. And also, as part of our activities, we do have things like traveling expenses and things like that reimbursed, which are from basically our members' money. So it makes sense to pay for it in order to be a representative and be part of it. And then other than paying to be a member, you can choose to be an accredited representative. And what I mean by an accredited representative is to get some online training that teaches you what a representative does, and also sources of information to help you fulfill that role. And also to complete your training in becoming an accredited representative, there is also some face-to-face training. There is a bit of a wait time in order to get that face-to-face training, so you can become an accredited representative literally as you finish your online training. The face-to-face one is really useful because it teaches you, it's kind of like a simulation of what a local negotiating committee is, and how to undergo that sort of negotiation part of your role. But you can do your job as, or you can be an accredited representative without it. And those are 2 QR codes to help you go to the specific pages of whether you're a GP to join a local medical committee, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And if you're not a GP, the left-hand side QR code will take you to the respective page that will guide you into how to ask someone. Specifically, it's the industrial relations officer that you have to email to ask about becoming a BMA representative. So what you have to do is email them and say, hey, I'm interested in this. It may not happen straight away. It is a bit of a lengthy process, but as soon as you are an accredited representative, you remain an accredited representative wherever you move. And then I'll pass on to Rohan to talk to you about LNC versus LMC representation, and then a bit of regional involvement, and then I'll chip in as well.
Can I pop in there and just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you just talk more about what it means to be an accredited rep? Like what role might you do as an accredited rep? Does it like what does it involve really, and what does an LNC mean? What does that involve? You know, if you could just elaborate on that a little bit, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, so this is genuinely what we were about to talk in terms of LNC and LMC representation. But being an accredited representative can mean a lot of things. So And I guess we'll elaborate on that because you can be involved on at a local level, you can be involved at a regional level, and you can be involved at a national level, or all three together. It's up to how much time you have and what you're interested in. But it can involve things like from guiding someone to for example, their study leave allowance, because some people come to you with questions like that, and you're like, oh, how many days of study leave do I have? And then you just guide them to where to get that information or give them the answer straight away, to even more complicated things like when a trust imposes a change in a rota pattern without consulting its members, to negotiating with the trust local changes, or pushing back when a trust wants to change something that is nationally contractual, and things like that. But we'll talk about each and every one of these things as we go through each level of representation from local to national.
Okay, so since we're on this topic, an accredited rep is essentially a designation from the BMA, the union, that you are designated to carry out trade union activities in the trust. So while all of us can be BMA members and carry out things for the BMA, it's really the accredited reps that can carry this out under the umbrella of the BMA. Which means then you get entitled to certain things such as trade union leave to carry out trade union activities, and the trust will know that you are one of the spokespeople for said members to talk about issues. Now, you can be an accredited rep without being a member of the local negotiating committee or the local medical committee. Now, what is the local negotiating committee? That is a branch of local committees that negotiate with an individual trust. LNCs are for non-GP doctors and LNCs are for GP doctors. LNCs are usually created of multiple staff groups, so think resident doctors, SAS doctors, consultants. LMCs are traditionally GP trainees and GPs mainly, who represent GPs and their interests against health authorities in the NHS. Now, to join the LNC, it can vary depending on trust to trust, but the steps are usually the same. You need to indicate, after you become an accredited rep, you need to indicate to the industrial relations officer that you want to become part of the LNC. Now, most LNCs have a charter which sort of designates how many members from each staff group can be a part of the LNC, because you don't want an overrepresentation of one group to the detriment of another. And depending on the number of posts that are available, there are two ways that you can become a member of the LNC. One is you can be elected. So if there are multiple people who want to become an LNC member, then elections may be held if there are a limited number of spots available. If there aren't, and the election would be among the staff group that is going to be represented. So if it's a consultant LNC member, then the consultants will have an election. If it's a resident doctor member, then the resident doctors will have an election. It can vary a little bit depending from trust to trust, but that's roughly the process you'd follow. The other way is you get in uncontested. No one else has really put their hand up to be an LNC member, and then you become the new LNC rep. Once you're part of the LNC, then what you're expected to also do is join into meetings with trust management. So these are usually called JLNC or LNC meetings, where you sit down with trust management. So that would be medical staffing, directors, CEOs, and so on. And the number of these meetings can vary. It can be once every 3 months, once every 2 months. It really depends on the trust that is doing it. So that's roughly what works. And the LNCs then feed into regional councils, which Christina will talk about later. And the LNC is a place where you can see change quite quickly because it is a local role. So if you're looking for some satisfaction or changes that you're able to bring, that would be via the LNC or the LMC. So think of enforcing your contract, getting new well-being places, getting hot food in the trust for on-call doctors, whereas more national roles and regional roles may not really show you that immediate outcome and input that you're looking for from your side. Now, the other important thing to remember is, especially as resident doctors like myself, sometimes you're not going to stay in the same LNC for more than 6 months or a year because of changeover. There is a process that is available to you that the IRO can transfer not only your accreditation as a BMA rep, but also your LNC accreditation to a different trust. It does depend on how, if there is a space available in the new LNC that you may want to join, but it is possible for you to maintain your LNC and accreditation status as you move across trusts. It's easier to keep your accreditation status. It's just a simple tick box. The LNC can depend on how full or how active another sister trust LNC is. Christina, if you want to add something there.
Yes. So genuinely, even if it's made to sound very competitive, there are trusts that have absolutely no representatives from a certain branch of practice. So, for example, in my neck of the woods, Calderdale don't have an accredited rep for residents at the minute. So you will find yourself in lots of trusts where there might be lots of vacancies and you will have no competition. Wherever I've been a local negotiating committee representative, I've not really had any competition. And in a way it is good because it gives you that space, but also even if you're not on the LNC, like Rohan said, you can still be an accredited rep for that trust. There's no limit to how many accredited reps a trust can have. And you can still act in the role of a BMA representative, even without sitting on that local negotiating committee. You can still feed into the local negotiating committee, and they should listen to you and raise the issues that you bring. It doesn't make you less valuable, the fact that you don't sit on that JLNC/LNC or join those meetings. You can still do your role. You can also, other than being a representative, you can have other roles within the LNC. You can be, some LNCs have deputy chair, honorary secretary positions that you can be an LNC chair. So I was an LNC chair as an F2, even if it was my second year in the UK. And it was challenging, but it was also really rewarding and a good way to learn all the contracts across all branches of practice, but also to bring in quite a few changes. After that, my LNC became a lot more active, and so on and so forth. You just need to make sure that you have support from members of staff.
Just to add, so more senior staff groups such as consultants tend to get 0.25 PAs dedicated to trade union activities, such as being the LNC chair. This may not always be possible when you're a resident doctor. So like myself, I've been able to negotiate some time with my supervisors to have some part of my day dedicated towards LNC or BMA activities, but largely that's not really existent for resident doctors. So what it also means is you really have to improve your time management skills and learning how to prioritize things if you want to keep all this work outside of your personal time. It's not going to always be possible. There are some times where you have to take some of this work outside of working hours, but it's going to have to be something you personally look at. Like Christina said, I got elected to my LNC unopposed and became the lead resident doctor for the LNC. And I'm now in the process of transferring it over to my sister trust because I've just rotated in August. So,
Absolutely.
all right. And now regional.
Thank you. And more than happy to go back in terms of like time management and kind of how much time it takes out of your own time and things like that. When I was an LNC chair, I was laughed in my face when I tried to negotiate to have some personal admin time to try and do my LNC chair role. But that was, 6-7 years ago. So things have changed since then. And because if you are in training, you have as part of your curriculum, everyone in training should have as part of their curriculum leadership and management. So you can use part of your self-development time for this role, but obviously that will come at a cost from everything else that is part of your training. So from a regional involvement, you can be part of regional, so there's regional committees. There's regional committees for each branch of practice. And when I mean branch of practice, that means the area, the professional kind of group that you belong to. So you can be a resident, which is someone that isn't a SAS doctor, so associate specialist, or a specialist doctor, or a consultant, or retired. And you, in order to be part of a regional committee, you don't have to be elected to be part of it. If you are an LNC rep or an accredited rep locally, you can join any of these committees. Some committees are open in terms of their meetings, even to people that aren't reps. For example, Yorkshire is open to everybody. When we do have a regional meeting, that meeting invitation goes out to literally every single member, but not all regional branch practice committees will be that open. There's also regional councils. So regional councils are meant to link all branches of practice together. Regional council seats are up for election, and the election is open as we speak. And if you get elected to a regional council, you get elected for 3 years. Sometimes regional councils can be open to people that aren't elected to it, but the majority of the times they're not. You can join their meetings by applying to a visitor's scheme, and I'll share the QR code for that in a minute. And there's also, so we've spoken about branches of practice in terms of secondary care, the majority of them. We've spoken about regional council that unites everybody together, from medical students to retired and GPs. And there's also regional LMCs, which bring GPs together from all across the region. I've been part of the regional council for quite a while, since I moved to Yorkshire. Regional councils are a bit of a mixed bag. Some are more active than others, but they are a good way of connecting with other branches of practice and making use for the branches of practice in terms of support for you as a committee. So, for example, when we have strikes as resident doctors, it would be ideal if we had support from every other branch of practice, especially SAS and consultants. And the best way to do that is to link in with them. And a good way to do that is for regional councils. We're going to get to a national conference, and we're going to mention regional councils and divisions. So please be mindful of that and keep this in mind when we get there. In terms of national, there is a national equivalent of each regional committee. And I know this might sound a bit complicated, but basically every branch of practice has local, regional, and national representatives. The more regional or national you are, the more you need to be elected. Nationally is where the majority of the policies get decided and the majority of decisions are made. Now, there is a national committee for each branch practice. So there's a residents' national council, there's a consultants' national committee, sorry, there's a retired members' national committee, and you need to be elected in order to be part of that committee. Your nationally elected representatives may communicate with you regardless of regarding what matters are discussed nationally. Some may not. So it's very much dependent on how much they can share, because some of the issues are confidential, but also how much they think of communicating with you from a regional perspective. It's very less likely that they'll communicate with you as an individual member. So being on a regional committee is important in order to get that communication. But the best way to know about what's happening nationally and be involved in national decisions is to be part of a national committee. The elections are quite competitive, but that doesn't mean that should put you off. And there's a lot of other committees that exist nationally that you can be part of, for example, medical legal, pensions, etc. And there are several ways in which you can be elected to those committees. One of them is for regional elections. And there's, for example, for the residents, we have elections going on at the minute. If you go, and we'll show you the website for elections, if you go onto that website, you can see elections for resident doctors committees. And that means that those positions that are put up for election, a good part of them will take you to the national resident doctors committee election. And now we're going to move on to conferences. And I'll let Rowan talk about the Resident Doctors Committee Conference. And if you want to talk a little bit about ARM, you're more than welcome to as well.
So there are conferences for each staff group, again, like we've been mentioning, that's all staff groups have their own sort of conference. So you have the Resident Doctors Conference, you have the SAS conference, you have a consultant doctor conference, you also have LMC conferences and so on. There is another conference that probably I will mention first, which is called the Junior Members Forum. That's an excellent way of getting into the idea of conferences and so on, because it's really for new BMA members or those who have only had practice for around 12 years or so. And it's a safe space. You get 2 days to sort of learn how conferences work, learn how to write motions, learn how to get policy passed. And the Junior Members Forum also allows you to go to ARM, which I'll touch on later. It usually has around 4 seats dedicated to ARM. Now, the Resident Doctor Conference happens every year around April. I'm also part of the conference agenda committee for next year. Now, within the Resident Doctors Conference, what ends up happening is motions and policies are proposed from all across the UK to be debated by resident doctors in the Resident Doctor Conference. How do you get a seat in the Resident Doctor Conference? Just a month or 2 before the conference actually happens, the link to sign up to become a delegate for the conference opens up. It's quite competitive. It's sort of a fastest finger first sort of thing. Whoever gets their name in immediately usually gets it. There are also quotas for representation, so we are quite keen in the BMA to have more female members join, more marginalized members to come in, so LGBTQ members as such. And that's where we are looking to have more representation rather than it being a male-dominated conference otherwise. Once you get in, it's usually in London in BMA House. So if you're outside of London, you can have your travel expenses reimbursed and accommodation expenses if required. For those that are new to this conference, you have a first day members conference just to teach you how these conferences work. But most of us otherwise just show up for the main conference day. In this conference, you will have motions presented, debated, and voted on. And if they're chosen, they then get transferred on to ARM, which is the annual representatives meeting. And at ARM, a national committee decides if it should be on the set of motions that need to be discussed, or if it's in a gray area where we want members to vote on these motions to decide if they're important or not. Once you're in the Resident Doctors Conference, besides voting on policies, you also have some elections that occur. You have elections to become the next chair and deputy chair of the conference for next year. You have elections to become members of the conference agenda committee, like myself. I had to compete in an election during the conference, and the conference is the body of the conference is the body that votes for you. So there's less, you don't need to search for a lot of people, you just need to find the people in the conference to vote for you. The conference also sends delegates to the annual representatives meeting. So again, there is an election for that. What is the annual representatives meeting? It's the national policy making body for the BMA. So all branches of practice elect motions and policies in their own committees, in their own conferences, that all gets pooled in to ARM. The ARM then will go over all these motions. They will vote on them. and the ARM then decides what becomes BMA policy. So any issues that are important to you and you think should be part of BMA policy needs to get voted on and accepted at ARM so that it becomes the official policy of the BMA. And like Christina was mentioning, the ARM can also elect members to different committees, be it the National Resident Doctors Committee, or the Medical Legal Committee, the Pensions Committee, Professional Fees, and so on. ARM, again, stands for the Annual Representatives Meeting. There are multiple ways to get elected to it, which I'll let Christina take over from here. There.
Yeah, so when we say conferences or annual representative meetings, they're not like your typical medical conferences where you have people presenting stuff. They're genuinely meetings, and they're considered, because they're open to everybody without you being a local accredited rep, they're considered representative of the whole membership. So you will have people there making decisions in your name, unless you're there. And in order to get a seat to ARM, you have to apply for that seat either via your local division, which is the local equivalent of your regional council. You can apply for a seat at your regional conference, at your regional, at your national branch practice equivalent conference. So if you're a resident at the National Resident Doctors Committee conference, you can apply for a seat there. And if there are any seats left from the divisional pool of seats, they will go to your regional council. So you can also ask your regional council if they have any seats available. To ARM, you can also propose motions yourself. You can send them either to your division or to your regional council, and they will all send these to the ARM. And then the ARM agenda committee will look through all of these and kind of make an agenda of what is worth discussing and what isn't worth discussing. There's a lot more to say about this, but and I'm happy to go through all of this, but mindful of time in terms of how much we can discuss. But basically, there's ways in which you can be involved in the BMA. That doesn't necessarily mean you being an accredited representative and investing all that time in being a local, regional, or national rep. And that way is being part of these conferences. There's nothing else expected of you to do than to sign up and come and have your personal say on what you think these motions are or are not. These motions dictate what the BMA's opinion is on a matter, and also what the BMA is going to do for the next year or many years with regards to an issue. So, for example, very controversial in terms of abortions, if the BMA decides through a conference like this that they are pro-abortion, everything that they're going to say from now on is going to be pro-abortion, because this is what the conference or the membership equivalent has told them to do. So that's why it's really important. In order to be part of meetings, if you've not been elected, we were talking about the visitors scheme, it's really important that you keep this in mind. So if you're not sure whether you would want to be part of a committee or not, whether you want to stand for elections for a committee, applying for the visitor scheme is really good, because it gives you the chance to join one of these regional or national meetings and see what they're all about. What do people do there? What do they discuss? And if you're a visitor, you can also have your say in those meetings. You can't vote, but you can speak. And these meetings are quite welcoming to visitors. We love having people coming to see what we do. And you get papers, you get briefed before these meetings. It is a really nice one to give it a chance. I'm just going to jump over this to go to elections, and then I'm going to jump back if that's okay, just because of time. What I wanted to say in terms of being a rep is to remember you become a rep to have a purpose, but not a war in mind. So I think that the most consuming of roles that I've seen people have is when they go to fight against people rather than for an issue. We're there to represent our members, we're there to represent something, and having a purpose rather than a negative purpose gives you more energy and more drive to do work. Make sure you enjoy it, because it is a lot of work done in your own time. reach out to other reps. If you think that there's nothing happening in your trust or in your region, just ask other regions what issues they have and do a little bit of digging. The majority of the trusts will have similar issues, same as regions. And if things happen in your life, it's okay to step back. These roles aren't set in stone, and they're voluntary work. So it's okay if you have something going on in your life to step back for a while. I want to talk about elections very quickly, and then if we have time, me and Rohit can talk about all the work that we've done and why we've enjoyed being reps, because obviously me having been a rep for 8 years means I did like doing something, and why I'm still here. So there's a lot of elections going on at the minute, and it's really important that if you do have a think about, and if you do want to get involved, to keep an eye on the elections pages. What the QR code at the top will take you to this lovely page about committee elections. I am not a fan of this page because it doesn't really talk about regional elections, but it is good to have a browse of it and see what committees are out there. However, elections.bma.org.uk is the page that you want to go to. And you can sign up with your normal BMA member login. This is my elections page because I live in Yorkshire and work in Yorkshire. So my elections open at the minute are the Yorkshire Regional Council elections and the Yorkshire Regional Resident Doctor Committee elections. And here it will tell you when the nominations open, when they close. You can see how many seats are open, and then you can nominate yourself. And you can have a read through all of this. Make sure you write on there why you want to be elected, why you and not someone else. Don't talk about everything that you've done, talk about what you want to achieve. And in order to get elected to some of these roles, you might have to ask people to vote for you as well. But the majority of these elections will take place around what people will vote people that look like them and kind of that they know. So make sure that you do talk to people to also vote for you. A statement and a nomination isn't always enough to get you elected. And there's also a voting page and a results page. But please have a think about standing for these positions. Even if you don't get elected, people will see your name, and some people will see your name and remember you, which is also really important. And it's, like I said, good to put your name out there. There are regional committees that you can be part of because you're all IMGs without being elected. So there's a Forum for Racial and Ethnic Equality called FREE. Anybody can be part of that regional committee. And the chairs of those committees go on to the national FREE. So again, another good forum to think about being part of without being an elected rep. And I only mentioned it because I saw it there and I'd totally forgotten about it. Is there anything that you'd like to add, Rowan, when it comes to elections? I only jumped because I thought it was really important.
So as Christina said, the more regional and national in terms of elections that you have to do, the more that it is expected that you get people to vote for you. This can be quite uncomfortable for some people because they don't want to make themselves known to others. They don't want to get on social media. They just don't want to have to mix what they use perhaps as personal accounts with something that is of professional nature. And that's okay. But if you do want to get into more national roles, you're going to have to figure out a way to get your name known to multiple people on multiple sites. It is easier for some professions than others. So I'm in psychiatry. It's quite isolated as a field from every other specialty. So I have no choice. I have to speak to my friends in acute medical specialties, rely on them to get my name out if I were to stand for these elections. And, I have to make a call about my social media use. Do I want to use it to canvass for an election? But those are considerations you would have to make as to how accessible do you feel you need to be, even after you get elected, because you're going to represent a large body of doctors. So by virtue of being their representative, you also have to be accessible to them. and you have to figure out what's the best way to be accessible to people. If it's WhatsApp, then it's WhatsApp. If it's WhatsApp and Instagram, then it's WhatsApp and Instagram. If it also includes Twitter, then it's Twitter. If it includes Reddit, it's Reddit. But that is a decision you have to make. But what you can't do is get elected and then not be accessible. So if you are going to take regional or national roles, you have to first decide how accessible you want to be and what level you're comfortable with. Because we can't have you get elected and then not be able to represent your members. And you'll only know the views of your members if you are accessible to them, because they will tell you what they want to see. So, yeah.
And not to say that people have not been elected and haven't been accessible. So there are people that do that. And like Rowan, I'm a pediatrician. I literally interact with my own little pool of people that look after small people, people in adult med or surgery will have never heard about me. But it is one of those things. And the reason why it's good to be accessible is, for example, when the UK grad prioritisation motion happened in January, a lot of people reached out to me on the IMG Facebook group because they knew I sit on National Council, or sort of knew that I was something to do with the BMA. And that's what people will usually know about you. People will know about all the committees, and that's fine. But being that point of call is really, really important, because people won't have anywhere else to go. You're that person. And I think that's probably, it's probably best to get questions rather than talk about what we've done or achieved in the BMA, unless people do ask us.
When you are elected to be a member of a committee, you as a whole of the committee make decisions for particular policies or particular staff groups. So for example, if you're part of the resident doctor committee, no decision that the resident doctor committee makes is without a qualified majority vote of the committee. You may have individual disagreements, but you must have a vote of the committee done to say that this is policy now. The chairman or the secretary or the co-chairs are the people who are going to be publicly known as the leaders who will represent the committee in certain meetings. Say the current co-chair is representing all resident doctors with West treating the health secretary. But even if the co-chairs make anything or in terms of discussions, they have to come back to the national committee. The national committee has to say yes or no, and then things progress. So it's not something insular like that.
Well, in a way, yes and no. So the resident doctors, so national committees, we have an executive committee. And I know this might sound a little bit complex. So if you get elected to a national committee, you can stand for further elections to be part of the executive committee of that national committee. So either be the chairs, or there's the terms and conditions of service subcommittee, there's the education and training subcommittee, and there's a few other people that are part of that executive subcommittee, that executive committee. Those people can make decisions without national RDC, the same as the chairs can make decisions without the national committee. The same as national committees can make decisions without letting their regional committees know. It's not ideal, and it shouldn't happen like that. But unfortunately, things like that do happen, which is why we need people that are transparent and keen to keep that communication going at all kind of longitudinal levels, just so that we are as representative as possible. But there will be people that will make decisions without their membership knowing, which is unfair, but it is how it is.
But just keep in mind that even when these decisions are made, you can have accountability for it later. So yes and no, like Christina said, but you have to keep in mind that it's not just you do everything you want on your own. It can have in certain circumstances, but not every circumstance.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for clarifying that, because it has been a bit confusing for me, which is why I wanted to attend this meeting today. So thank you.
Don't worry, it's confusing for us as well.
Oh yeah, the BMA is literally like a yarn ball when it comes to its committees. It's so complicated. Even National Council has its own subcommittees. There's finance, there's like all sorts of like little committees. Sometimes some people say that it's made intentionally like that, but there's no guide to teach you properly about it other than talking to people like me and Rowan. So, or by being part of it, I learned the hard way, which was diving into it. I remember asking someone, is there like a book that I can learn about all of this from? And they were like, nope. I was like, great.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I am curious, but I know you'll talk about it after, how it was for you as an F2, because I just finished F2 and this is my first year working in the UK. So I'm curious how your experience really was, but I know you guys will get to it.
As an F2, I genuinely kind of dived into it. I think more consciously or unconsciously. And I guess at the time, so now I have I have 2 disabilities, but at that time I didn't have any. And as a medical student, I'd already been used to doing a lot of voluntary work and not really sleeping and things. But I was lucky to have the support of my industrial relations officer, which is the member of staff that looks after your local or regional committee, but also my educational supervisor was my deputy chair on the LNC, and he was a BMA rep himself. So I was really lucky to have his support as well. I did get a lot of pushback. So, for example, my foundation program director pushed back a lot against me being LNC chair, pushed a lot against me doing any BMA role. He was like, oh, I don't think, he genuinely called me in a meeting and said, oh, I don't think you should do all these roles because I couldn't do it. And it was quite scary. So, and I think being a rep as an IMG has also been really helpful because I found that I've had that protection as being a rep and the protection that sometimes my colleagues offer me in terms of my rights. But being a woman and someone that at that time I didn't have this accent. Like I've developed it because I was just tired of people not taking me seriously. And especially during that F2 role, leading the LNC, being on a national committee, I was just tired of all of that. But being a rep has offered me the majority of the times a bit of protection whereby if you know your rights really well and you have the term BMA rep in it, you will be protected. I'm not sure if it protected more as the right term, but you know who to go to. And you have more streamlined ways of asking for help, I guess, when you get disadvantaged. But I got so much pushback when I was an F2 about everything that I was doing. I'm not joking. I think I cried once and I was like, I realized that I'm actually more like sadder about leaving my role as a rep than the push that I was getting from my foundation program directors. And then I left. I finished F2 with like having done so much work for the trust and for the region, and proved everyone wrong. But the best way to prove people wrong is to have a good portfolio and say, well, actually, I'm on top of my portfolio. Don't know what you're talking about. And to know that if people push back against you, that's their own limits and insecurities. But I promise you, being a rep has offered me quite a few protections. And whenever my husband tells me to give up my BMA roles, I do worry about losing this kind of protection of being a rep.
Yeah,
Okay.
just adding to that, I think Christina's right. So I am now going to be 3 years in the UK. So I started officially taking up a BMA rep role and so on around February of last year. So I'd sort of fast-tracked a lot, went to junior members forum, became LNC rep at the same time, went to ARM, got national policy and so on, passed. It is tough. It really is tough sometimes balancing it with training, making sure your portfolio is done and so on. It's quite rewarding, especially when you're in a local role, because you can see, and that's what I was mentioning too in the start, if you want to see change fast and you want to see results relatively quickly, the LNC is the place to start to get that sort of positive feedback that you need. And it's a little difficult for me now that I've transitioned from my old trust to my new trust to sort of leave that work sort of midway that was started and done to come to a new trust. But also what tends to happen is when you're the L&C rep, especially if you're an active one, you might find yourself in this position where management will also come to you first before they get things out for everyone else, because they want to get your opinion as an L&C rep on it, which is quite useful because because sometimes what we miss out in doctor training is, yes, we are good clinically. Yes, we can be good academically, but you also need to learn how to be good with management. You need to learn how to manage resources. You need to learn how to manage people. And while we learn about managing people within our own staff groups, we don't really learn sometimes how to interact with other staff groups that are not part of the medical workflow. So this can be a nice way of learning how to do that. So yeah.
Thank you.
And you can do QIs that as part of your role, so and get like recognition from local to national leadership for points for applications and things like that. The more successful your work is, the more you can put that in your portfolio. So from a local perspective, the most recent work that I did was, because I've not been a local rep for a little bit, was looking at the access to study and annual leave of people in pediatrics, because people were really struggling with that. I just did a survey, proved to management that people weren't taking the annual leave, and one, got management to agree to pay people back for that, but also to do some work and make sure that people are getting their annual leave before moving on from their rotation, and also managed to get the access to people taking over their leave in their next rotation if they are within the same trust. Obviously compromises, but you can put that as an audit or as a QI. And I was also involved in the 2018 national contract negotiations. So the changes that happened from the 2016 to the 2018 contract are classed as a QI project, because we looked at evidence that supported the changes that we negotiated for in the 2018 contract, and then brought on national change. So that for me is classed as a QI project, and as national leadership. And you learn so much from conflict management to how to bring people with you, how to bring change within a committee. It makes you very resilient. There's loads of things that you can kind of put through from a supporting element, either in a job application, but also to your supervisors as to why you need to do and why it's good to do these roles. And the BMA has courses for its reps, so they have leadership level 1 and level 2. They're not the best courses, but if you're only starting in your journey, when I started my role as a national rep, I've found them very useful. They have active bystander training, and I know it has the word training, but they are genuinely very useful.
Just since we're on portfolio points, so being an L&C member would give you local representative points. Getting into a regional council or regional committee would give you regional points. Getting onto the national committee would give you national points. So think of it like 2, 3, 4 points as such. If you're really being competitive with your points, then you want to make sure you have a benchmark of points first, and then start going for higher points. There are multiple ways of approaching this. You could also be a non-BMA rep as well, so it doesn't always have to be within the BMA. But if you are becoming a BMA rep, then you must also have the vision to try and push things forward for a change. That's why Christina said, don't go for a war, go with a purpose. Because it would be quite disheartening if you do become a BMA rep and then don't actively push for change or for the membership.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think I just wanted to add, I've never been a BMA rep, but I was a lessons full-time rep at the trust. So you have various BMA resources, even if you're not a rep. Or so in my first year, there were some issues with the trust not paying me properly. in another year, there were some visa issues that the trust wasn't giving me the right sort of letter, add in when I was a less than full-time rep. So it's actually, even if you're not an accredited member, if you don't feel like you have the headspace for it, you can reach out to the BMA through various channels and, you know, speak to your rep. Like, so you're not directly doing something, but you can affect change by being the first person to raise an important point as a BMA member. So that might be the difference between being just a BMA member. You can still affect some level of change just as a BMA member versus being an accredited rep. So I think maybe that was a part of your question as well. So yeah.
And also, if you make those changes, you can use them to get, like, you can use them as an argument. This is what I did. This is why you should have me as a rep. This is why, like, I've already done this or had this win. This is the reason why you should vote for me. For example, it can be really fulfilling, I promise. Hence, I've been doing it for 8 years.
I understand.
But Olivia is right. There's lots of things that you can, it can be really fulfilling. It's a steep learning curve as well, but you're not on your own. You have your IRO, you have your LNC chairs, you have your colleagues, and everyone else. It is, I have enjoyed it. And I think the reason why I do these webinars and I've been trying to get other IMGs involved is because there's not enough of us on committees. We're not representing our membership. We are IMGs are 30% of the BMA membership and we're 40% of the workforce. On National Council, we're only 9.8% of council. And only 3 of us have spoken and done some work on that. Well, mainly me on National Council. But like I've done some work with regards to pushing back against the UK grad prioritisation and working with people like Rohan, like Yemi, like Olivia, trying to get something that supports and kind of helps us from an IMG perspective. So grandfathering exists because all of us pushed against UK grad prioritisation as it was in its initial form, regardless of what is being said nationally. And without you at the table, there's no voice like of IMGs. And I'd love to step back, but I think my biggest worry has always been that there's never been people in the room like me. It's like in the same position as me. There will be, and I guess why I'm happy that we have numbers in terms of IMG representation is that people kind of sometimes conflate ethnic diversity with actually being an IMG. If you have both, obviously your life is a lot more difficult for various reasons, and that on top of other protected characteristics from race, disability, neurodiversity, etc. And the BMA needs to be representative. They can't make decisions about people without people, and we need people there. But it has to be right for you, and it has to be right for what you can deliver as well. But like I said, there's no right or wrong. You can always step back if it is too much. Not necessarily fully. People still take annual leave. People still there are ways of working with and around it. There's still a lot of work to be done. As now a person that has 2 disabilities, I'm also neurodivergent. I don't think being a local rep, for example, helps with all of this. You can't be part-time from a local rep perspective, nor from a national perspective. You can't job share, which is really sad. And it's something that I've been trying to do, or at least trying to change, because people expect you to do a full-time equivalent job when you can't. But those are things that, again, need people like me, people like you, and the BMA won't change unless there's people like me and you in it.
I think just to add, when the UK grad prioritisation debates were happening, it was evidently clear that people who attend the RD conference, UK graduates who go to RDConf, or even some very senior members in the BMA know nothing or very, very little about how someone gets their crest form signed. So it was said by someone publicly goes to the RD resident doctors conference that you can get your crest form signed at a clinical attachment, which is categorically untrue, right? And then someone quite senior in the BMA said that trust can rush IMGs into jobs with lower pay or with less favorable terms and conditions to at some point negate the effect of them not being eligible for round one. These are all things that are not possible if you're an IMG who has worked in the system. You know that a job advert for an IMG takes ages for you to get a visa to come into the country, takes ages. You can't get a crest form signed just like that. In fact, getting your supervisor to sign a crest form. I was in a trust grade F2 role, and my supervisor was uncertain about signing my crest form because she hadn't seen me doing all of those things, whereas and it was exactly built like a FPO FY2, my FY2 year. I was doing the same rotation system, had the same portfolio. And so in fact, it's tough to get a crest form signed. So without realize that I have made this mistake of not being involved in the BMA because I haven't been able to tell people this, and people had a wrong idea and have run away with it and taken it to national councils, have taken it to regional councils and spread sort of, information that's inaccurate because we haven't been there to tell people the correct things, I think, which is more important for us to be involved in the BMA. It's just, if people don't know, they get the wrong idea and they run away with it. So that's why it's so important for us to
And
be
some
involved.
people just spread the wrong information. Like, genuinely, there's been so much of that. And I think some of us, including Rohan, myself, Olivia, and quite a few others, have tried to myth bust so much of the wrong information that's been flying around. So people just say facts that aren't true with so much, I don't know,
I would
security that it makes people think that they are true. And actually having the right facts has been really helpful. But what if none of us were there?
I would just add in, like Christina's mentioned, so I will only touch on it briefly. Me and Christina have been having discussions, like say, of how much we are already in the BMA, for example, do we want to take more roles and so on. And it can feel like once you're already in, that you just need to try and fix everything. You cannot do it alone. You need to do it with other people. So while we're asking people to join the BMA, be involved, we want you all to do it with the capacity that you have. We don't want you to overextend yourself and try and get into everything because you can't. Because you have other obligations to attend to, you have your own health to look at, and so on. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't get involved. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be active. But what it means is be active within the means that you have. If you can't be active, say, for this year, and you think you can be more active next year, that's fine. But you need to look in avenues of how you can be active while balancing everything else, because that is the main challenge. So Christina, for example, has 3-4 roles that she juggles at the same time, besides her PhD, besides her, her job role as a pediatrics reg. Christina, add more if there is more. I'm pretty sure there's more. I juggle, my training program, an LNC role, a committee, and a conference role, a college role, and a fellowship. So sometimes there's just not more capacity. I would like to do more, but I just can't at the moment. Maybe next year, but you need to figure out where your limit is and not overextend yourself beyond that. Because if you do, you'll burn out and then crash out of everything. And we can't have that happen to you. So yeah.
Like a few things, and this is again, so there's a few things that as an IMG you might want to be aware of, and platforms where you might get more information about these sorts of webinars. So Thriving in the NHS is who's hosting this today. So Thriving in the NHS is organised by Ibifunke, who's a surgical registrar in Edinburgh. So if you plug into Thriving in the NHS, you will be notified for any IMG specific webinars. And that sort of thing. There is so this webinar is not affiliated with the IMG Boys, but that is another platform. So IMG Boys is just a platform for IMGs to get more information about getting involved in the BMA, and who else is running for local elections, regional elections, national elections. So if any of you want to be involved, then you can drop either me, Christina, or Rohan a line, and then we can always get you added to the right groups if you want to be involved. So that might be something to think of if you want to get involved with other IMGs who are already in the BMA.
Just to note that we might ask for your GMC number just to make sure that you are an IMG and to make sure that you are genuine. We're not asking, I will forget your GMC number and everything. We can delete it once we've verified that you are an IMG. But the only reason why we're asking for that is because we've had quite a few people reaching out to us that were not IMGs pretending to be IMGs. And regardless of what people say about IMG Voice on social media and everywhere else, we're genuinely just a group of people that want to help other IMGs to get involved, because in the BMA, we don't represent our IMG membership. It doesn't matter if you're a BMA citizen or a UK citizen, if you were born here, if you are an IMG, you are an IMG. And if you can be the citizen of a different country or you gained your UK citizenship whilst you're here, it doesn't matter. If you did your medical school in a different country, you are an IMG and you're eligible to join this group. And the sole purpose of it isn't to represent IMGs, it's there to help IMGs get into the BMA. We're not a war. We're not a war zone. It's genuinely just to help you get involved, because people like me want to step back, and I want to make sure that there are people that will represent me when I'm gone from my national roles.
Yeah, it's also in some ways a way to network and to be a safe space for you to, when the frustrations that you have that you may not have anyone else really understand about the struggles of being an IMG. Like, I think I have spent months just trying to explain how visas work and how it's a constant nightmare to make sure I'm doing what I can to stay on top of it. And no one besides an IMG is going to understand. So consider joining, but more also it's sort of part of our motivation, because some of us want to step back and we just sort of want to make sure that there are people who can take the mantle after we leave.